1 2 3 4. This is a test. 1 2 3 4. This is a test. Hello and welcome. This is Mehdi and this is ZomCast 23. Today we will be talking about Python file I/O. So one of the common usages of any language, especially a language like Python that is very popular, is working with files. You might have some text files that you want to work with or some binary files that you want to work with. I will say the principles behind working with files and how to work with files, how to open the files, how to create the files. And once you know that, you can work with different types of files, including text and binary files. So let's switch over to Visual Studio Code and talk about creating files. For this session, I will create a new script and I will name it file.py. Let's add a comment. ZomCast 23 working with file I/O. Cast with capital C, and there we go. First of all, you need to create a file. We need to have a file to open and to manipulate. So what I'm going to do is create a file, a simple text file, and then add some characters and some statements to it. This will be something like a text file, and to create the text file, actually I call this method open. Open is a method from Python's standard library for working with files. And what it does, it allows you to open a file either for reading or for writing or for reading and writing or for appending to. The way we specify this to Python is using some flags. But first, we need to specify the first parameter to this method, to this function. The first parameter is the name of the file. So I create a constant to specify the name of the file. I could have put it here directly, but I prefer to have a constant for it. So file name, and I name it, for example, names.txt. all right, because this is a text file. This is supposed to be a text file. And first I'm going to open it for writing. So I say open file name. This is a constant, and then the flag that specifies the mode of the opening, which is writing, and we specify that with this character W. W means that we want to open it for writing. If you have in mind that you want to open your file for only reading, you will specify R, which is the default mode, by the way. If you don't specify any mode for opening a file, it automatically opens a file for reading. So we open the file for reading or writing or for appending to with character A. or for reading and writing by using this character, R+. This symbol tells Python that we want to open the file for being able to read from and write to at the same time. Alright, back to our previous and first flag that we used, which is W. I also add a simple comment here, a simple log actually, which says opening the file, print, opening. Which file? I specify the name here using a F string actually, file name for writing. And then we open the file for writing and we write some things to the file. Note that you can do this in a couple of ways, but I will show you the recommended way. The simplest and the straightforward one that might come to your mind is using this method. Text file, which is now a file object because it has been assigned by the result of the open function. And we can say write. And inside it, we specify some string to write to the file, okay? Like some names. First, Mehdi, my name, and text file. Actually, this is going to take a long time this way, and it's not recommended. I can create a list of names, like names, and say Mehdi, John, Matthew, Jack, Mary, Jane. Now that we have the list of names, we want to iterate over them and write them to the file. You can simply do that for name in names and text file, write name. This writes the name to the file, and note that this way we are writing to the file and all names will be appended to each other, so there will be no space between either of these names. In order to add a space or some separation, I also add \n, which creates a new line in the file. This way I will have the list of names in my file, and later that we open the file in Visual Studio Code, you see that they are shown more beautifully. Okay, now that we write it, we exit the loop after all the names have been written to the file, and eventually we close the file, text file. Make sure you do this. If you forget to do it, some resources will be dangling around and it will create problems probably. So it's always recommended that you close the file. Later I will show you a method that you can avoid this and that automatically allows Python to close the file once you are done with it. Let's run this script for now. Actually, let's add a log that we have written. Done writing names to file name. All right. Opening the file for writing the files, writing the names in the file. So another log here, print writing data or names to that file, the name of the file, file name, And now let's run the script. There we go. Opening names text for writing names to names.txt, done writing names to names.txt. And to make sure that it worked, actually this code worked, we need to open names.txt. There we go. You see that the list of our data or names have been written to the file just the same way that we expected. Another easier way to do the same operation is actually using the with keyword. You know, with is a keyword from the Python programming language that is used in a lot of situations, including the situation that we are currently talking about. And it is used in this way. Instead of working with text file and taking care of closing it after we are done with writing the data, we can say with text file after we have created the file, of course. With this file, do what? As if, actually, do these things. F, write this name in the loop, name. And in order to allow Python to recognize name, I move this code snippet inside the loop here. F write the text file as F write name. What's the problem here? Okay, we need to add some indent because it was in the body of the with, and there we go. With text file as if, write this in the file. And I hope this works. If it doesn't, then we will move this to the outer, to the outside of this for loop and make for loop a child of this with statement. Let's try this. And by the way, we don't need to close the file manually anymore because the with keyword closes the file manually, automatically. But I suspect that this will not work because in every step of the loop, this actually closes the file, and in the next iteration of the loop, we don't have access to the file to write to, so this should fail. There we go. Value error, IO operation on closed file, as I expected. So in order for this to work, we move this to an outer level like this. With this, with the file, do a loop, and then say, for example, create a loop inside the with statement body, and then say for every name in the list of names, write that name in that file that we specified in the outer level. Let's run this. There we go. If we open it, oh my god, we didn't add the end of the line. \n \n. You see, without adding the \n, the line ending character, once you write every name in the list, you don't get that formatted and beautiful file that we expected and we got in the previous one. In order to have this in every iteration, we need to add that to the write statement. We need to append the \n character to our name that is being written to the file. And now we are doing that actually. Let's run the file again. Let's run the script again and check names. You see that the file is now working. But something interesting, you might ask, what happened to the previous content of the file? Looks like that the previous content was erased. That's exactly what happened. When you open a file for writing with the W flag that like we did, any content from previous operation in the file and any existing content in the file will be erased. So you should be careful. If you have something important in your file, you should be careful not to get rid of those by using the W flag. If you want to keep the previous existing content in the file, you need to use another flag for opening the file, like A for appending to the file, or R plus for reading and writing at the same time. So let's see what happens if we actually open it that way. Open it with A and run the file again. You see that the previous content remains in the file and new content is added to the file. So a new list of the names, which is exactly the previous list, is appended to the file. If I run it again, it's added on and on. So this is thanks to the A flag that opens the file for appending. And if we open it with R plus, it opens it for reading and writing, so we can read at the same time and write at the same time. Let me remove some of the content of the file. We should get a similar output, similar to what we got with the A flag, with the appending flag. Oh my god, I'm sorry about the noise of the motorcycle. That's a crazy area. A lot of noise. Okay, running it again, and we expect that a new list is appended to this. Oh, it didn't. So it actually doesn't append. So similar to the W flag, the R plus flag also erases existing content from the file. So whatever you have in your file will be erased. The only difference with the W in R plus is that you can read and write at the same time. It doesn't allow you to append to the file. So it's something that we need to remind ourselves about. Okay, back to the append mode. The next thing I'm going to talk about, you see that we also talked about the with keyword. It is very handy anytime you are working with files. With a file, you open a file, you want to do some operation on it, you want to do some processing on the content, it's better to use the with keyword. Actually, it is something that has been recommended by Python's official documentation, and you can check it out on docs.python.org/tutorial. And another thing, we have another flag that you might want to work with, and that flag actually is for opening the files in binary mode. What we have discussed so far is for opening the files and operating on the files in text mode. We are writing text data and we are reading text data from the file. Actually, I haven't talked about reading yet, but I will soon. If you want to do operation on a binary file, actually open a file for binary mode. You have some special data. For example, you want to save the content of your application's data, and it's not supposed to be text. You want to save some special binary data. You open your file in binary mode, and the way you do it is by using the B flag. Actually, you append the B flag to the opening mode. So we are here opening in append mode, and we also append the B flag, which opens it in binary mode. And actually, if we, let's change this to write mode. If we run this, probably it will look a little bit weird. Yeah. When you open the file in binary mode, you need to specify a bytes-like object for writing to the file. You cannot write string to the file. So you need to use a compatible data type when working with binary data files. Back to our normal mode. So you open files in B using the B flag for binary mode, and do some binary operations like reading the file, writing some binary data to it, and so on and so forth. It's a little bit more complicated. It's often used in situations like, for example, you want to save your the content of your files, your text file, your image files, for example, and later you want to retrieve them and use them, or you want to compress them in some form, using some algorithms. But there's a recommendation, and there's actually a notice, there's a warning. If you are doing binary input-output, binary file input-output, you need to be careful about line endings, because line endings are different, are handled differently in Windows and Unix operating systems. For example, in Linux systems, in Unix systems, the line end is specified by \n, but in Windows it is \r and \n, succeeding each other, one after the other in sequence. And Python has a special handling for that. When you write to the file, Python automatically selects, if you are on Windows, selects to write line endings as \r, \n, and if you are on Unix, it selects to write \r, \n. So you need to be careful, because this might make your data corrupt. This might destroy your data by manipulating and modifying the content of your binary data. We will not talk about much about binary mode in this lecture. Probably I will dedicate another lecture specifically for talking about binary data operations, because it's a little bit low level and it's not often a very common use. All right, now before I wrap up this file IO discussion, I'm going to talk about reading the file. There are a couple of ways for reading the file, and again, the recommended way is using the with keyword. So with text file, note that this file has been closed here. So for reading it again, we need to open it again. So open the file again, open file name, this time for reading, and we say with text file, with this text file I want to do this operation. I want to read some data. There are some read functions. There are several read functions in Python. I can say we read file as f, and then fread. Fread reads all the content of the file and then returns it. So content, this way, content, it returns all the content, and then we can print the content of the file. F content of the file read using read, file read. is what? Is content. Okay. We can also add some logging here. Opening file F, opening file name. Again, for reading. Let's run it. There we go. You see that the content is read completely, and the whole content of the file is read in one go and then displayed to us in the print method. Another way that you can read the file content is by reading line by line. So we can say, let me check something here. Okay, there's also a parameter that you can specify for the limit of the data that you want to read. I don't want to talk about it for now. Let's keep things simple for now. With text file as F. Again, this will not work because it's already closed by text file by the with keyword here. So we open it again, text file, open file name, exactly the same thing, and a log printf opening file name for, again, for reading line by line. This is another method that I want to show you. You can use this to read the content of the file line by line, and this is specifically true about textual data, about text data. So with text file as F, we create a loop. Why do we need a loop? Because we know that our file contains several lines, and it will give us an iteration, something like a list that we can iterate over, because each time it reads the file, it gives us a new object. It gives us a new line of the file. So for line in F read line, print F line, which we know is the name that is written in that file. Each time we read a line, actually we are reading a name from this file, and this displays it. This reads the whole content of the file one line at a time and displays it. And eventually we know that with the with keyword closes the file once it's done with it. So line, let's run it actually. Oh my god, opening names.txt again for reading line by line. So there's something wrong here. It's actually this gives us a new line. Okay, this gives us a new line, and we are only working on one line, this first line. And once you iterate over a string, it gives you a character at a time from that string. And we know that the first line that we read, the only line that we read, is the first name in the file. And if you create a loop over it, every step of that loop will give a character of that. So let's actually fix that. F read line. There's something here. We know that this will continue reading the file as long as there's something to read, and once there's nothing else left for reading, it will return an empty string. And an empty string is something like false. So we can say if line, if read line, if line equals, come on, if line, actually let's put this in a parameter like this, and then say if line, then print it. There we go. This should work. As long as we have something to read from the file, we display it, and once it's done, the file is automatically closed by the with keyword. Let's run this. Oh my god, it's only reading one line. Why this is happening? Because we don't have a loop here. Yeah, we need a loop, baby. We need a loop. If line, while read line, and unfortunately we don't have something like while, I think, in Python. While we do? Come on, I didn't know. It will make our life much easier. While this is not null, while line is not null, we are reading a line and then we print it. Okay, let's forget about this for now. There's something wrong and I'm not very proficient in using while, the while loop. To save time, I'm gonna use another method. Another way of reading the file is using read lines, sorry. I say lines and they say f read lines. This gives you basically all the content of the file, very similar to what we had here, f read. So read lines, it gives you a list of lines actually. In the other one, we got a single string, but in this we receive a list containing all the lines, and we can iterate over them. For line and lines, print f line, and that's it. This should work 100%. There we go. It is working. So that's it, basically, as an introduction for working with files. I hope that you liked it. Opening text files, binary files for reading and writing. Although we talked mostly about text files, but binary files also acts in a very similar way, but handling binary data is a little bit different from text files. We might have another lecture about them later on. I hope that you liked it. Before I wrap up, let's go talk about a little bit about the news of this week. All right, back to my banner. Yeah, we don't have much news actually. I didn't have time to gather a lot of news and I'm sorry about that, but there's something interesting that caught my attention about Podman. For those Linux lovers and those of you that love containers, Podman's new upcoming version, Podman 3, allows you to run Podman Compose files with ease and without the need for using the Docker backend. And it actually allows you to run your Podman Compose files with ease with thanks to the Podman backend. Actually, it uses Podman basically as a backend for Podman Compose, for managing your containers, for bootstrapping your containers, and for running them. And it's very, very nice feature. Previously, there was something called Podman Compose, a utility that was created. Actually, it simulated the Podman Compose operation, but it didn't exactly work like Podman Compose. What it did, it read the containers, list of containers from your Podman Compose files, and also the volumes that it needed to be created, it created them, and it put those containers in a single pod and ran them in a single pod. It worked as almost a replacement for Podman Compose and released us from using Docker and Docker Compose, because once you are using Podman, you probably don't have access to Docker. You don't have Docker installed, especially on Red Hat based operating systems. So that's why Podman comes handy and Podman Compose comes handy. But the new feature that I told you about, the upcoming feature, the new feature in the upcoming version of Podman 3, is that it creates basically, as far as I know, it creates a Kubernetes file and kind of reads the container information, the metadata of that container, all those containers actually, because you most often you have a lot of containers, you have several containers defined in your Docker Compose file, reads them and creates a Kubernetes file, and then uses that Kubernetes file to run your containers, to run those services and containers. Beautiful. All right, now it's time for the article of the week. We have a beautiful article this week, and interestingly, coincidentally, the article is written by myself. And it is, again, interestingly, it's about Docker, it's about containers, and it's about Podman. The article is called Managing Containers with Podman Compose. It's about the Podman Compose utility that I told you about already. And you can find this article on Fedora Magazine. Please check it out and let me know what you think of the article by commenting, by leaving your comment below the article. I hope that you find it useful. Okay, that's it for this week's ZomCast 23, January 29, 2021. Take care, stay safe, and have a good code.